Alright, so what I'd done is I just taken out that zigzag mess that had happened along this other seam allowance here when we had seamed the pocket to the front side of the skirt or the garment. And then what I did is I just did a straight stitch, and I'm going to come back in and do a pinking shear on that when we're in class next. And so what we need to do is we actually just need to do the exact same thing on the other side of the skirt. So first thing that we're going to do is we want to match up our notches on our skirt with that raw side, with the raw edges there, making sure that our notches are together. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple pins in. And I'm going to stitch right at 5/8 inch all the way up and down this seam line. Okay. And just make sure that you're on the that average stitch length between 2 and 2.5. And I'm going to go ahead and do just a quick back stitch at the beginning of this line, and then I'm going to do it also at the end. Alright, I'm just stitching with that raw edge right along the 5/8 inch markings. Do a little back stitch there. Alright, now I can trim up these thread tails. Now the only difference here is that we are not going to grade, so we're not going to trim up the seam allowance on the pocket side of our skirt, or the pocket side of this seam that we just did. We're just going to do a seam finish to both edges of these seams. So since my zigzag seems to be having a fit, I'm just going to go ahead and do a straight stitch along the lines, and just come back and paint both of these. I'm not going to worry about doing any back stitching at the top and bottom of either of these stitch lines. And what I'm doing is I'm just running the edge of my presser foot right along that seam that we had just formed. And I'm just going to come back and do the same thing for the other side of the seam allowance here. And again, we're only stitching through the seam allowances. We're not stitching through the pieces anymore, just the seam allowances, so we can do an edge finish on those. Alright, no need to back stitch. I almost did. I can pull out that and then go ahead and trim up those thread tails. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and finger press this open just to make sure everything's good here. And then what we need to do is we want to put the right sides of everything together. So we're going to go ahead and put the right sides together here. And we have these little notches that are at the top and bottom, and we're just going to go ahead and match up those notches and put a pin in. And just to hold those in place. And then what we want to do is we want to match the markings at the front or at the top and the bottom, because if we look back at our pattern extends up. It extends upward from the pocket opening as well as downward. So what we need to do is we need to we need to identify those notches and go ahead and kind of push these seam allowances back and pin them here. We're going to go ahead and pin these together. Oh, I need to put them forward. I'm so sorry. We want to match up the fronts together, and just make sure that we match up those notches, or we identify those notches, and just make sure that we should have a notch when we match them up. We should have a notch on our pockets as well. So just make sure that they go ahead and face forward as if we have this big massive 4-layer seam. Alright, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing here is I'm not pushing the seam allowances back, I'm pushing them forward, and I have the right sides together, matching up the pocket notches, and then we want to make sure that we match up the bottom as well. So just make sure that all of our seams, when we kind of fold this up, we want to make sure that our seams are matching at the top and bottom. hopefully you can see that here. See how our seams are going to match up here. We just want to make sure that they ride right on top of each other. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in there. Make sure that everything's good. Okay, and actually what I should do is I should probably start up a little bit higher with that to make sure that the seam is going to ride together nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and just fold this fabric back and make sure that everything is lining up. My seams are lining up as I go down, and then I'm going to go so far and then put a pin in place. Then I'm going to fold it back up. And as I roll this fabric down, I want to just make sure that the seams are lining up perfect. And then when I have them lined up, I'm just going to jump to the front side and put a pin in. And then just continue working my way down that seam line slowly, making sure that everything is lined up as we want it to be. Okay, and then we also want to continue pinning the rest of the skirt all the way down, or the rest of this side seam all the way down. And then also make sure that you have your side seam pinned above the pocket markings as well. So I have to go back up to the top, make sure that my seams are lined up again up here. I just want to double check. Mine were a little off. So again, I'm kind of folding back, making sure that the seams are lined up, and then lining them up all the way to the top of that garment piece. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop the camera briefly because this video is getting a little long, and I know I have upload problems if I let it go too long. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop, and then I'll start right back up.